don't give up. Like, yeah, yes, I know, like, life is gonna, like, throw you curveballs every chance it gets, but you can't let the difficult moments wear you down. And there is gonna be life. Sure, there are gonna be temporary difficulties in life.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Academy Podcast with the #1 international best-selling author and multi-award winning success and life coach, Kamil Shah. I want to thank each and every one of you for taking this opportunity to grow together with me, Kamil Shah, and my guests on this program. Each episode of the Academy Podcast is filled with insights and wisdom from my guests, which I believe can have a profound impact on the way we live our lives. Without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome, everyone. Hello, and welcome again to the Academy Podcast with myself, Kamil Shah. And today I am truly honored to have a special friend of mine, a co-author, and also a poet. My guest today is Oswald Perez, aka OP Writer. Oswald is a writer and a poet from New York City, known for the poetry book, A Poetic Journey, Staying Home. He has a Bachelor of Arts degree in criminal justice from John Jay College of Criminal Justice. When he isn't writing, Oswald works for the nonprofit organization Housing Works as a donation associate. Oswald has appeared on the podcast Don't Keep Your Day Job. He also had his set of poems, An American Tourist in Italy, published in the 2020 edition of the literary anthology Groundwaters. He is currently working on his second book of poems, A Poetic Summer. Most recently, Oswald became an international best-selling author with the co-authored book, Authentic: Courageous Humans Who Changed Their Lives by Rewriting Their Story, which hit #1 on the Amazon charts across the globe. In Oswald's chapter, a story of survival, resilience, and creativity is told. He was able to overcome all the complications of cerebral palsy to weave tales of a life being lived. Welcome, Oswald.
Well, thank you, Camille, with that wonderful intro. Thank you.
Awesome. Oswald, as we were chatting before we started the podcast, first and foremost, congratulations on becoming an international best-selling author.
Congratulations to you too, Camille. Like, you're one of the 21 authors that made up Authentic.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you so much. And again, as we were saying, I mean, it's amazing that you are in New York City and here I am in Dubai, regardless of location, geography, and time zones, and yet we are connecting and speaking to one another. So I'm truly honored to be in your presence, brother.
The wonders of technology.
Absolutely, absolutely. The second thing, Oswald, today is super special because for two reasons. Today is the launch of the paperback version of the co-authored book.
It is.
Yes. And that's super exciting because the digital version was released last week and it reached #1 on the Amazon charts. So, and this week it's super quick. The paperback version is out. So if you're listening to this, go ahead and connect to the Amazon site nearest to you to get to purchase the book, the paperback version, and the digital version of the book. So the second amazing thing is that Oswald, you are my first guest in the first ever Academy podcast. So congratulations, brother.
You're kidding. Like that was even more of a surprise than Authentic launching today. Like I was not expecting that, but the honors all mine.
I'm so thrilled. Again, before we move on, I'm just so thrilled that you are the first ever guest, and I know this conversation today is going to be an amazing one because I've read your chapter, and a deeply moving chapter because you tell about your story growing up and how you overcome those challenges. I want to bring you in and I guess tell your story, brother.
Where do we begin? Like that's the thing. Like, but when it came to this project, before this happened, like I've been telling my story in various bits and pieces scattered across pro poems, blog posts, but never has it all come together in one in one piece like it did here.
That's awesome. Again, you mentioned that I don't want to give too much away because I want people to actually go ahead and purchase the book because there's a collection of 21 different stories and yours is one of the amazing ones in there. You mentioned about your love for words when you were young and how that has helped you and shaped you to I guess, now become a poet yourself.
It has like, and the thing, what kind of like the name of my chapter, A Found Poet, it was something that I didn't realize I had when I started. Like all it was initially was writing writing messages into my parents' birthday cards, Christmas cards, Mother's Day and Father's Day cards. And in the case of my mom, having to translate the message from English to Spanish because my Spanish isn't as great as my English is.
Wow, I love that. That it all starts with again something that a lot of us can relate to and I guess take away is that you start small. I mean, start with what you have, and um, that grows into something much bigger. And I love that. I love that. You mentioned about connecting with your parents when you were young, and again, I'm just recalling bits of the chapter.
Sure.
The challenges that you overcame. I mean, a lot of the things in there because I haven't been through your journey. I mean, your journey is something special, and I really want people to be able to take away. I guess the courage and the resilience that you've shown, having come through what you had to go through when you were young.
Okay. So I was born I was born premature. I was born premature by 6 weeks. So actually I'm not the only child. Actually, it's just it was my sister and I. She's the older sibling. We were born minutes apart.
Twin sister.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
of all the people, like she's my like the person. She's my big my sister, my friend, my best friend, my hero.
Awesome.
She's the person that she means a lot to me.
I love that. I love that. As you were growing up, I mean, the challenges that you had to face, and I guess you mentioned about your school years, and that was a bit of a challenge as well. Um, a lot of people can relate to that because school isn't really a walk in the park. I remember my
It
school years,
it
and yeah.
it isn't.
So, what kept you going through your school years?
It was just my school. What kept me going through my school years was sort of like the path where it's like you go to school, you get your degrees, like you have your like you plan ahead for your future, and the fact that I just wanted to make something of myself with this life.
So that got you through, I guess, the vision of the future that I guess again referring back to your chapter, thinking about that there is something more to this that you are able to overcome what you're overcoming right now, and it's temporary.
It is that all these obstacles that I've had to deal with, they've all been temporary, but I knew that I just wanted to overcome, wanted to overcome them. I wanted to be as normal as live as normal a life as I could do under the circumstances.
That's interesting that you brought up the idea or the concept of normal, because I've never been comfortable with that term, only because growing up, there's this idea of normal, and what does normal mean? Uh, Normal for me is slightly different to everyone else. I mean, what's your interpretation of normal?
Normal's being on my own 2 feet, where for years, it would just be like a procession of orthopedics surgeries on my legs. I never felt, I always felt like I was somehow different than everyone else. So when it comes to normalcy, just being on my own 2 feet is what I consider normal. I grew up like I kind of through my school years. I wasn't placed in special education classes for most of my school year for most of my school years. So I was in classes with people with similar situations. So in reality, for the fact that I felt like I was going through this completely on my own, dealing with all the complications on my own, that was not the case. Like there are people in the world who are trying to make their way in it that have the same situations that I do. It's not that much of a surprise.
That's beautiful, Oswald. I like that. Thank you for sharing that, because sometimes we feel alone, but the fact is that there are other people in similar situations that can relate to us, and either they draw strength from us by looking at us, and that we're in this together. But you become a role model, and it works vice versa, because there might be somebody else who's going through what you're going through, and they become your role model.
Even even though like I don't consider myself a role model, or I don't consider myself a role model.
You are, brother. You are.
I know it's just like it always like takes like whenever like I hear people tell me that, I'm sort of like, really, like I'm a role model. That's like too that doesn't quite like square exact that doesn't like, or I'm just like downplaying, like I guess I don't want like the head of like was like, oh, I'm a role model, like all the pressure and the expectations on me. I just want to my existence, carry on my existence.
Carrying on your existence, that in itself, I think, is something um, to aspire to, and I think to look up to, because giving up is I guess not an option, because you are here now because you didn't give up at any point, having gone through all the struggles.
There have been moments where I felt like I wanted to give up. Specifically, going back to the summer of 2001, I had that summer I had two surgeries on my right leg, because the most profound complication that I had to deal with was a deformed pair of legs. So I had a few surgeries just on my legs alone earlier in my life. But back in 2001, it was decided that I would take on it would operate on my leg twice in 6 weeks. So
Oh, wow.
I was lying in my bed like barely 3 days out of the hospital in so much pain, multiple stitches and three pins in the middle toes, and in so much pain. And it's like 90 degrees outside, smack in the middle of the summer, just
Wow.
miserable to the point where it's like the pain medicine that they gave me, like I consumed most of it within they had to like inevitably take it away from me, because I was like, because it was in my reach,
All
but I
right.
was not in a good place at all
Mm.
at that exact moment in time. But I figured, okay, I'm gonna have to put in all the effort to get myself better. I am tired of like having the braces, orthopedics. I'm tired. I am tired of all this. I'm just like ready to like be able to stand on my own 2 feet for the first time in my life. So I gathered in all the will that I could, even though like it was difficult at times because I had to go to physical therapy twice a week, leaving
Mhm.
Queens into Manhattan for 9 months of
Wow.
recovery through that surgery. But it was all worth it to finally take that brace off my leg a year and a month later and take that first step unaided. Like I could not keep the smile off my face. And I tell everyone that that is the single happiest day of my entire life, even with everything that's come along since. Like nothing that I do is going to top that moment.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Oswald. I've got a tear in my eye just listening to that. I mean, it's so powerful. Uh, you mentioned about that symbolic moment where you were standing literally on your own 2 feet and thinking back about all the I guess the challenges and the hardships to get you to that point, and also at times where it felt like you just felt like you're putting the tools down and just say, look, is this worth it? You question yourself, is it worth doing all of this to get to, I guess, the future self, the future Oswald.
That September 2002, I started my senior year in high school. I couldn't like lift my jeans up to the exact part of my leg where the brace once stood enough. Like it was just so much joy to know that that part that was no longer there.
Wow. Oswald, thank you for sharing. I mean, it's just an amazing story. Now, I'm going to kind of remind listeners, if you want to know more about Oswald's story, please get yourself a copy of the book, Authentic, Courageous Humans Who Changed Their Life by Rewriting Their Story, available in digital format, if I'm not mistaken, with Kindle, and also in paperback format on Amazon. Both are available on Amazon, so do get yourself a copy. It's a really nicely written chapter by Oswald. Again, Oswald's a poet, and the way that he writes, it's truly amazing, because I can actually when I'm reading it, I can actually feel your presence in front of me and reading that story, literally in physical form. It's in front of me. So the way that you write is really, really, I guess, vivid.
Oh, thank you. It's like I've heard that one quite a bit where it's like people tell me like how vivid, like it's almost like you're there with me.
Yes.
And granted, like this, I admit writing this chapter wasn't easy because I never like written. I mean, I've written blog posts before, but I've not like written like more than I haven't written to like this extent as I've done here. And I naturally all the second guessing, like, oh, is it what should I like keep? What should I write about? Like, am I going to get to 2,500 words? Like, all of that came up in the process of writing this chapter. But I was so grateful the fact that Wellsome, whose imprint, the Key Publishing House, has published both versions of Authentic. I was so grateful that she brought this opportunity to my attention. That was like fire enough to see this challenge through.
That's amazing. Again, feedback from coming from people can only mean one thing. You're doing a great thing there. So keep doing it, Oswald. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oswald, I want to come to a few things. If you don't mind, I'm just looking at your what you've got on there. You've got a Spanish football team scarf. Is that right?
Yes.
Uh, I,
So
can I assume
there's a
you're a
bit of a
football fan?
small. Yes, I am, and that's the you you might like out of this shot, like in my closet, there are a whole bunch of more of these where that came from.
Awesome.
So the scarf, like this one, of all the scarves that I have, it's the one that have the most sentimental attachment to, because in November 2015, I took the first time I traveled completely on my own.
Oh
I mean,
wow.
granted, I flew to Madrid by myself and met up with a escorted travel group, which we went 8 days from Madrid, Granada, and Seville.
Wow.
It You can thank my sister for this one because it was after she mentioned around the 30th birthday, she took a trip to Hawaii with her girlfriends. I naturally I tried for my efforts, I tried to get on this trip, but it wasn't gonna be. So I asked my sister, I still want to travel by myself. What would you suggest? And she was the one that brought up the escorted group travel for someone like me reading Miguel de Cervantes Don Quixote, and that came into my mind. I just wanted to get. It had been 3 years since my first trip to Paris and London, and my sister and I took together. I just knew I wanted to get back to Europe again. So the fact that I read Don Quixote, the fact that I read Hemingway's For Whom the Bell Tolls,
Wow.
inevitably I came back to Spain for my decision. And plus I speak, even though my Spanish isn't so great, it's at least passable enough that I won't be mistaken for an actual I can get away with the fact that even though I speak Spanish, I'm not from Spain. So on the last day of the trip, I was at Barajas Airport, the last duty-free shop before my flight gate arrived. So I figured, okay, I still hadn't changed my euro back to US dollars yet. I had one last duty-free shop in front of me. I went in, and there the scarf was hanging on the rack. And I'm buying this
Oh,
because I
wow.
wanted for something that was not either Real Madrid or Barcelona. The Barcelona scarf would eventually come later, but for right now, I was just looking for something other than from either of those two clubs. I mean, granted, the day before they played each other as we arrived back in Madrid the previous night, but I saw this scarf hanging on the shelf at the duty-free shop, and I knew it was meant to be.
Wow. Interesting story there. Things happen for a reason, and it was meant to be that was the scarf. That would be a memento from your trip to Spain. And you mentioned Barcelona. I take it, are you a Barcelona or Real Madrid fan?
Well, I'm slightly more Barcelona than Real Madrid. I mean, like I I ended up visiting the Bernabeu on the very first day of that trip. Just
Wow.
barely 2 hours after my first stop at the Reina Sofia. Just me and Picasso's Guernica. That
Wow.
was my first stop. I got on the metro, and then the next stop was the Santiago Bernabeu. The FIFA video games and TV do not do justice
Yes.
to setting foot on the field of the Bernabeu, sitting in the press chair, looking like you're taking questions from the media, just being it doesn't do it justice to actually physically being there. And I felt that way through the entire trip, whether it be walking through the Alhambra,
Mm.
experiencing flamenco for the very first time, walking through Seville, and eventually the the Mesquita in Cordoba, and then walking through those streets with the patios that get decorated during the late May, June. It was a dream, enough to the fact that I kind of forgot that in hindsight, I should have taken the 10-day trip, which would have ended up in Barcelona, but I didn't. But as I was sitting on the flight back to New York, I sort of knew I'm coming back to Spain. And less than a year later, there I was back in Barcelona for a second time through Spain.
Well, I like that you touched on a really interesting point there, talking about experience. You have to go and experience it, and go and sit there and soak in the atmosphere. There's only so much we can read and absorb from to actually go physically go.
Exactly. It's as much as reading it, listening to it, seeing it online. as good as all that is, like just being able to have all those experiences, walking through the grounds of the Alhambra, like Washington Irving's Tales of the Alhambra doesn't even do that justice. Like just walking through the gardens, walking through the fact that the Alhambra used to be the seat of the Moorish kingdom in Spain. I don't blame them for for the fact that used to be the seat of a kingdom. Like it was just as opulent, as majestic as one would imagine. It was just walking around, just to soak in how beautiful it was. And that goes for all the cities on that trip. Just soaking all of it in. It just felt glorious.
I resonate with that and connect with that really well, because there's only so much you can read and absorb, but to actually go and physically experience the thing is a completely different thing altogether. I'm trying to kind of connect that with the way that you write your poetry, because I've read some of the stuff that you've written, and it's absolutely amazing. It's awesome. It's very vivid. The key thing is, like I mentioned before, the way that you write is vivid. So it is almost, I can just picture you writing it, but when you're writing it, you're actually experiencing the theme, or you're actually placing yourself at that very moment of time as you write. That's why I guess I connect with your writing, and it becomes very vivid. How do you go about writing your poetry?
I admit, like I don't sit around. I don't like the words kind of have to come to me. Like I don't like book it, schedule like time. Like I try not to force myself to I have to sit here and write and just think of something to write. Usually the words will come to me, whether it be something I see, something I experience, someone else's prompt that looks interesting for me to take on and put my own spin on it. Like I try not to force myself to force creation, because if you do that, sitting there like frustrated, like thinking to myself, why isn't anything like coming out? I just let it flow when it comes, and when it does come, just run with it.
I like that you mentioned the I guess what they call flow state. You allow the thing to just naturally appear, and not trying to sit down and say, look, now I'm blocking out an hour, I have to write something, or I have to produce something. And sometimes it comes, sometimes it doesn't. Have you had any moments where it just came and you weren't ready for it? You had this flash of inspiration. Have you had any moments like that before?
Every now and again, it tends to happen when I don't have like my memo, like whether it be on my iPad or my phone, like the memo open at the exact time, or like I'll see something, try to like quickly like take a photograph of it, and then like eventually like and then see where I can take it.
Awesome. So capture a bit of it, and does it require you to kind of come back to it later on and enhance it a little bit more, or just work on that at that moment of time?
I just work on at the that moment of time. But I do like sometimes like I'll have a piece ready to go, but I won't like put it up immediately. Like I tend to stockpile my poems just so that I have enough something to say. Like so I'm not like running around trying to figure out like, oh, I need to like put something up to say, like, do I have anything ready to go?
Also, again, I'm just looking at, if you don't mind, I'm just intrigued by what you've got on your wall back there. I can see Paul McCartney. I can see a few other
Yes.
album posters. Is that right?
Yeah. Paul McCartney. Sir Paul's on one side of the window. I'm a Beatlemaniac.
Wow.
This story did not appear in the chapter. So it was December 1995. My dad, at the time, he had his Cadillac Fleetwood, so he would have it tuned to what was the oldie station here in New York City back then, WCBS FM, which was primarily an oldie station. So it was a Saturday before Christmas, give or take about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We were going Christmas shop buying the Christmas gifts, and there was an exact moment where our car was underneath an elevated rail bridge, and I kid you not, I hear Ringo Starr's introduction to She Loves You, and for reasons even I can't fathom after all these years, I start singing along without having the faintest idea as to who the artist is until the song is over. And they mention She Loves You by the Beatles.
Oh, wow.
And I'm surprised after all these years, I still remember that almost to a near T, that I remember that moment.
That's really interesting. You mentioned about capturing moments, and those key moments are there that sticks with you. Key moments in my life, and the fact that they are, like you're saying, these key instances where it forms a foundation for you. In your case, you became attached to kind of the Beatles and the amazing music that the Beatles, and again, Beatles forms a foundation to all the kind of, dare I say, rock music, and even music, shall I say, that we hear nowadays, because of that. And I want to touch on music. It's just to stay on music, and how does music, I guess,
Sure.
play a role in your poetry?
Sometimes I will like base like pieces off of the song, off of song lyrics, base poems off of going off of turn like a concert that I've been to into a poem in and of itself. Like just relive like that vividness, like is still there with me. That just like to relive those moments, Sometimes I'll go if I like if there's a prompt involved, like music lyrics involved, I'll turn it into something else entirely, but inspired by the particular song that's in front of me at the moment. Like music, much like travels, much like soccer, it all comes together to make me. It's all part it's all part of what makes me tick. Like I out of shot, like I have this like huge CD collection in several places here. But it's just like I just let myself get lost in the music and just admire the lyric.
Awesome. If you don't mind me asking, I mean, aside from the Beatles, what I guess who are the other artists that you are fond of?
Okay, so I'm a big fan of Pink Floyd, U2,
Awesome.
Oasis.
Awesome.
I admit, even though I live in the United States, it was that one moment of Beatlemania back as a kid that kind of like set me towards the path of crossing the Atlantic to become a fan of like most good chunk of the British bands that have come along through the decades. Like I don't pigeon myself to just one particular era. Like my music collection has a bit of everything. Even nowadays, where my music taste is expanded to the point where I'll have like Miles Davis sketches of Spain,
Mm,
Stan Getz Joel Gilberto's Gets Gilberto, a bit of Edith Piaf, bit of Fado,
mm.
like a bit of Astor Piazzolla, Paco de Lucia. Like it's not only just rock and roll. It's just like I've kind of like taken on, and also a bit of Irish folk for good measure. Like I've taken on the sounds of the places where I've been.
Well, that's really refreshing to hear. What you've touched on is the universal nature of music, that it doesn't matter what region, language, anyone can just tune in and listen to it and be, I guess, impacted by the power of music. And I really love that. I love that as well. Just as you were explaining there about that moment underneath the bridge where your dad switched on the radio to the oldies channel, I got reminded of my own childhood, and that's similar to what we used to do. My dad used to. That's the radio in his car. That's him. That's the only the only hand that touches the radio is his hands. He only switches on the radio, and it's always
Right.
50s for us. It was 50s music. So I'm just trying to remember Paul Anka. I guess a lot of Cliff Richard. So all the kind of the oldies.
Right.
Oldies and goldies, and we grew up on those songs. Yeah, so I completely relate to what you're saying there. We are just about coming to the end of the podcast. It's flown by so quickly. I want to.
I know, it's surprised, like it's already like how's like 45 minutes like gone like this quickly.
It's awesome. It just means it can only mean one thing, that we're just enjoying this conversation, and
Exactly.
truly enjoyed this conversation. But before we go, I have a quick fire round. Are you okay
Sure.
to do this?
I'm okay. I'm okay. Yeah.
Awesome. Again, the questions are quite straightforward. Sure. The series of 5, what I call quick 5 questions, right? So the first one is, what is your favorite word?
Naturally, it's one of those, I keep saying it, but it's like I probably overuse it at times.
So naturally.
Yes.
Awesome. The second one is, what are you currently reading?
What am I currently reading? I have I'm going through another read through of Peter Mail's A Year in Provence. Before the pandemic in September 2019, I visited France for the second time, and the back end of the trip wasn't Provence, where it's like Avignon, Nice, and that part of the country, and just me just being there. Like, it just reminded me, like, it kind of brought Peter's words to life.
Amazing. Question number 3. If you could meet someone either living or passed on, who would that be?
I know this is going to be a painfully obvious answer, but it would have to be Sir Paul McCartney.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
And I know I'm probably cheating a bit this one, but why not? Sir Paul and Ringo, I might as the Beatlemania in me is that strong that I mean, granted, I'm also, if that doesn't work, I would also love to meet the cast of The Simpsons. That's also another part of my travel, music, and The Simpsons. And granted, Paul and Ringo have appeared in their own separate episodes of the TV show. So it's just that's why those three came to mind.
Awesome. So if you're listening to this, Sir Paul, Oswald is here, and also I guess I'm not very familiar of the Simpsons cast, but I know Hank Azaria is one of them.
Yes.
So Hank, if you're listening to this, Oswald is here, and one of the dreams is to meet yourself and the cast of Simpsons. So please arrange that with Oswald, because it has to be done.
That would be words would fail to describe if something like that would happen. As much I mentioned, when it comes to The Simpsons, everything in my life has changed over the last 30 plus years, but the one thing that hasn't, every Sunday night, 8:00, I see the title card come on screen, and the whole and everything, the world, feels like a better place, even if it's just for only the half an hour of the episode.
That's amazing. That's the power of The Simpsons. I guess that's why it's the number one show, because it is what it is. It connects. It gives people that, um, like you say, for that 30 minutes, everything stops and you are at peace. So that, I guess, that's the power of The Simpsons.
Right.
Okay, so question number four. When you were a kid, what did you want to grow up to be?
I wanted to be an airline pilot.
Wow.
The reason being is where I am in Queens, I'm not kidding. I live not far from LaGuardia Airport.
Mm.
Like I'm serious. Like you could just, if you really wanted to, you could walk to the airport from where I am.
Wow.
And it was just like not just that, like seeing the planes coming in for the takeoff and the landing every time like I would be on the bus, or like if I walked further away from my house, I could see I would come across the landing lights, and I would be able to see the planes really close up. Between that and the fact that JFK, the international airport here in New York, is within driving distance of where we are. So it's just like growing up within distance of two airports and seeing the planes coming in and landing. I kind of had this like fascination with airplanes. And I thought to myself as a kid, like, oh, this might be a good way to see the world,
Mm.
to be able to see the world.
I guess a lot of people, especially kids, it's a fascination looking at airplanes, the way that it floats, and it just gets you to places in a short space of time.
Even as an adult, being in an airport terminal and looking out the windows and seeing those planes on the tarmac still fascinates me.
Mm. I'm just kind of connecting the dots here, because am I right in saying that your fascination for travel comes from planes and flights? And Oswald, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Don't give up. Like, yeah, yes, I know like life is gonna like throw you curveballs every chance it gets, but you can't like you can't let the difficult moments wear you down. And sure, there are going to be temporary difficulties in life. Life isn't all struggle. There are going to be there are going to be periods where where things are going to be amazing. Like you're going to be able to, you will accomplish a lot in your life. You just like need to take the time to give yourself the credit for all you've accomplished. Even though, like, knowing me, like I'm one of those people who won't like give myself the due credit for the things I've overcome and the things that I've done. I would tell my younger self that he should give himself the credit and the praise for everything that he's done.
Wow, that's amazing advice, and I think it's something that um, a lot of us, or all of us, can actually use as advice to our younger selves. So thank you for sharing that, Oswald.
It's my pleasure, Lee.
Thank you, Oswald. Again, just before we go, any last advice that you want to give to the people listening?
If I were to give some piece of advice, it would be this: like, to pursue what you love, because life is too short to not like follow what your passion is. Care about something that like you want to pursue, go for it.
One last question before we go. I'm just enjoying this conversation, so I don't know. I have to
Thank
stop
you.
myself. Oswald, what can we expect from you moving forward?
My plan is that I had the idea in mind that of the four poetic seasons, which was a series of four poetry books that I would put out. The first one, the Poetic Journey, is the first one in the line, which I wrote during the spring of 2020, at the time when I was first furloughed from my job, and second, we were in the midst of a stay-at-home order here in New York State during the first wave of the pandemic that hit New York particularly hard. So, in the midst of all this, a poetic journey came to be. My plan is, the plan is to go through the four seasons: spring, summer, fall, and winter, represented by the poems that I've written during each of those specific seasons.
Well, looking forward to that. I'm because I know it's going to be super special. everything that you do comes from the heart. It is pure, and yeah, I'm truly looking forward to that. So thank you for giving us a little bit of sneak peek of what we can expect in the next soon, very soon from you. How can people connect with you?
Okay, so if you're looking for my poems, I'm on Instagram. My handle is at Oswald Perez 85. That's where I post my poems on a frequent 4 to 5 days a week. There will be times where I'll occasionally pop in if something looks good to me. And I have it done. I'll post. But by and large, it's 4 to 5 days a week. I also have my website, oswaldperez.com, which I blog, and that's where you can find, if you're looking for the ebook of Poetic Journey. That's where I sell the ebook at. I sell it through the online shop. I also have a newsletter that I occasionally write from at oswald.substack.com, which is the newsletter underneath the security blanket, which the blog underneath the security blanket was the original name of my blog back when I restarted it back in 2013. So those are the places where you can find me and read more of my prose and poems.
Amazing. And we'll include all of these handles and sites in the description of the today's podcast for everyone's benefit. So so go ahead and connect with Oswald, because I'm truly honored and grateful. Again, I keep saying this, last year I wouldn't have imagined at all to be able to speak to all these amazing people, you, Oswald, with your poetry. And I'm just so grateful, I guess, to God, universe.
Honestly, thank you. Honestly, I didn't see, if you had told me this time last year that I would have met everyone along the way, to have been the inaugural guest in your podcast, to be part of a best-selling book, to have released my own book of poetry at this time last year, I would not have believed you. But the world goes these days.
I guess off the back of that, you have to believe it to see it. It's not the other way around. You have to see it to believe it. You have to believe it to see it. You have to believe it first, then it happens. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Oswald, thank you so much for spending the time today with myself, Kamil Shah, at the Academy Podcast. I thank you so much for your energy, your time, and your words of wisdom. So God bless, Oswald. Thank you so much again. And
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much for having me. It's the honor to be the inaugural guest.
Thank you, everyone. Until the next podcast, stay safe, stay healthy, and peace and love to you always. Bye-bye for now. Thank you so much for tuning in from wherever you are. My sincere hope is that this episode has not only resonated with you, but also given you some invaluable tips and strategies to improve your life. Don't forget to share your comments with me. As you know, I love to hear your views. Also, remember to follow the Academy, follow me, my guests, and tag us on our social media handles, which will be provided in the description. Most importantly, please leave a review and let me know that you've heard this podcast and how it has impacted you. Until the next episode, stay safe, stay healthy, and peace and love from me always.